Don't mind the sunglasses. I was out very late last night having a bunch of fun. I just want to cover two very important things that I think are kind of necessities, at least for my own work, on shooting photo studio work with LED lights. So again, we're just gonna cover two things. I will break down how I use it, and I'll show some examples from previous work, and then I'll kind of show you guys the lights and everything too and what they're capable of. So obviously if I use any backdrop, I usually pull it all the way out. I just don't wanna do it because so usually, I think majority of people, when they're shooting studio work, they use strobes. And the reason like most people like using strobes for any kind of photo lighting, they could just spit out way more power. And the reason you want more power, at least before, digital cameras didn't do well in higher ISOs. There are cameras that have like dual ISO, and they, like Sony cameras, just crush when it comes to anything that's higher ISO. But anytime you push a sensor like that, you sometimes are losing a dynamic range and just like overall performance on overall quality, everything from, again, dynamic range, color, sharpness, all of that. And so you want to keep your ISO as low as possible, and that's still generally the rule. And if you're shooting film too, easily just shoot like 800 ISO film, which I do a lot anytime I'm using LED light. But if you want even cleaner images, and say if you're shooting 35 millimeter, you're going to want to use 400 or like 120 ISO film. Again, this is where it comes into factor why you need high output lights. It's going to lead us to our first light, and that is just a 600 watt LED light. I'm shooting at ISO 800 at f2.8 at 1/50th of a second. There have been times where like I'm trying to shoot at f4 at 5.6, and so I have to put my ISO up to 800. I'm gonna go down to f5.6. The reason you'd want to do 5.6 is when you're shooting studio stuff, you don't have to worry about bokeh as much, and sometimes you want to go more for quality. The crazy part, so again, we're at 5.6, and you see we have a decent exposure now, ISO 800. I'm gonna now put it down to f8. When you're shooting at f8, at majority of lenses, even cheaper lenses, you can get some crazy sharpness out of them, even if they're like an f4 older zoom type lens. But what's crazy is the light's only at 60%. Let's just turn this all the way up to 100%. So now I'm gonna go and lower my ISO down to 400, that's 250. I can easily use this for an exposure. So again, we're at 250 ISO, f8, 1/50th of a second. I don't ever shoot at 1/50th of a second unless it's like a portrait, because then you kind of cheat it. But yeah, the whole reason you want to use a high output light like this, if I'm trying to get like a very natural look, like there's a giant window next to them, this would be my setup. And then from there, I would usually have the Fresnel on there. The Fresnel, I think it like doubles the output on there, which is insane. So you could get even more f-stops out of it. But usually what I'm shooting with is my big old Octabox. If I'm using that with the grid, again, to create like some contrasting window light, that thing cuts out so much light. So if you have a 300 watt LED light or 120 watt, you're not gonna have enough power. You're gonna have to be shooting at like ISO 6400 or something crazy to get proper exposure. So some other cool things about this light real quick though, we do have effects on there. All that's more for like video stuff though, which I will do another video about video stuff, but this is just studio work. All right guys, from there, the second most important light for me, overhead light. I like to really push the ambience in the room. You can also use it for upper key. Everything that I shoot, even if it's like hardcore studio looking work, like your typical contrasty type of light, I still like to add a little bit of color just to kind of give a cinematic look. So let me lower this down real quick. This is the Falcon Eyes RX818. They have a bunch of different versions of these lights. I've owned their bicolor one for freaking years now. That thing is just insanely clutch for cinema purposes too, but they're also great for photo use because I think it's 100 watt output. I don't know what the lumens are or the f-stop. I never actually measured it because again, I don't use this as a key light. I use it as like a fill or just a little bit of a kicker. You kind of cheat an eye light with it. There's a lot of stuff you could do with it. Now, what's really sick about this, so you see it's like a little softbox, but in reality, that's the actual light. It's this thin piece right here. And so if I want like a soft daylight diffuse look, I will use the softbox. But if I'm just trying to pump some color in there, you see how much more brightness you get out of there. There's a lot more level you can get. You can literally just gaff that to the ceiling. I do use this whole C-stand setup here. I don't even need the sandbags on there. I'm just doing it for safety because you never know. Again, just that little pad on there. You could cheat like a little door light on there. You could stuff in the bathroom, stuff in the car, put a V-mount on it. But what's super sick and important about this light, clicking in the menu, We'll go down to HSI mode, obviously RGB mode or HSI gel mode. I usually like doing HSI, so I have full control. From there, you can control your saturation, your intensity, and then your hue. And you can see the reflection of the light right here, how it's changing. So that alone just makes life so much easier. Now you guys can see how tired I am. When you're shooting strobes, there's no like HSI RGB lights on a strobe. So you have to go and start using gels, which is cool. It's a whole nother thing that you have to worry about. So again, this is like another upside to just using continuous LED lighting for studio work. All right guys, that's pretty much it. I know this wasn't the most epic video, but I was extremely excited to talk about this because I just recently got this apartment. It's like I've been here for like 3 months and I've been shooting a lot out of this, and I've been getting a lot of questions on how I'm doing lighting, what kind of lights I'm using. So I'll be doing more videos and more specific videos on depending on the light. There's some cool things coming up that I'm excited to share. But yeah, hopefully this helps you guys. The reason I like using continuous lighting for photos is you can literally just paint with the light and you can see what you're doing. Using strobes, it's almost like you're painting in the dark. Yeah guys, that's pretty much it. Peace.